Good morning, M4. How are you today? So this is our first lesson for online class as today is Monday. I hope you guys are ready with your notebook, English, for math and for Turkish as well, and also with your pen, pencils, rubbers, sharpeners if you need. As long as you're ready with your things, then that'll be fine. Now, so this video will serve as explanation to the lesson, so I need you to concentrate. You can take down notes if you want to, but you can always, of course, play back the video if you want to listen again. Okay? Well, as you can see, that's me. Actually, that's not me. You will see me later on. All right, so to start our lesson, I want you to check this word. This word. What is this word? It's recipe. So I want you to think, what's a recipe? Well, if we're going to think about recipe, you will think that it's like instruction to follow in order to make food or to prepare food. Well, that is right. That is a recipe. And you can imagine like your mom or your sister or anyone at home making bread. They follow a certain recipe, like they follow steps. Example, step 1, they need to prepare the ingredients like the flour, the baking powder, the yeast, the water, and all these things. And step 2, they have to mix it, then put the water, and then step 3, they have to put it in a tray, and then they put it inside the oven. Then after that, they will get a good bread, smelly and delicious bread. Well, same with our story. If you can remember, our previous lesson before was about the story of Harry's Mad. I'm sure you remember Harry's Mad. So same with our story. Every story requires a recipe, and you are familiar with this recipe because we already discussed this before in our previous lesson, like way back before in our term 1. And I'll give you like a time to think, what are the recipe of this story? We use this for our story mountain. So what do you think is the first recipe of a story? I'll give you a clue. That would be the introduction. So the first recipe of our story or any story is introduction. What follows introduction? Can you remember? Okay, that's right. It's the build up, and then followed by climax, and then resolution, and the last part, for sure you know the last part, it's the conclusion or ending. So these are the recipe of any story. So any story should follow the recipe. They cannot skip, because same like baking or doing any kinds of cooking, you cannot just do from step 1 and then skip the rest and then you go at the last. Like you cannot just take a flour and then directly put it inside the oven and expect to have a bread. No, you can't do that. So same with story, you have to go through step 1, 2, 3, 4 and then the end for you to be able to get a good story. So let's review about this recipe of the story. You are familiar with this, so let's just go through really quick before I show you your activity, okay? So in this page of the book, I will send this to you, or actually it's already in Google Classroom. I'm going to post it so you can check it as well. Let me see if you can see it clearly. Okay, here we can see the recipe of our story. First we have the, let me just clear that. First we have the introduction. It is where the characters and the setting is presented, like you present your characters, who are the characters and where the story happened. In the introduction, you don't have to tell all the characters in the story, or all the characters in the story, and they can, some of them may not be there in the introduction, but the most important is the main characters, or the main character should be in the introduction. Plot. The plot or build up, that is the events that set the scene for an issue to be resolved. So the build up, this is where, before the problem happen, this is where the story starts to build, and then you will guess what will be the problem, or what the problem will be. So this is where the build up is. The second is the complication, or the problem, or we call it climax. This is a complication. Complication means the problem in the story. This is the exciting part or event that will happen in the story. So if you can remember your story mountain, the climax should be on the top of your story mountain. So what happens there, that's where it gets exciting, and that's the problem. And then it goes down to resolution. Resolution is where the issue or the problem gets resolved or gets answered. So that's going down to the resolution. And then finally, we go to the ending. Now, in the ending, it's the reflection of a character. Reflection of the character, or the narrator will tell what happens to the character, if it's happy or sad or a funny ending. So that's where you'll see it on the ending. And also in the ending, you will find the moral lesson of the story, what we learned in the story. You will see it here. Again, this part of the book, I sent it in your material. You can always check it, as you can check it there if you want to read the excuse me, if you want to read these parts. Okay, so as for your activity, the activity will be like something we are going to sequence a storyline according to the recipe. And as we talked about, the recipe includes introduction, build-up, climax, resolution, conclusion, or ending. So we are going to sequence a story. So this is your activity. Now, this is an example for your activity. Like, imagine the story of Cinderella. Imagine the storyline of Cinderella. Now, I will show you events in the story of Cinderella, but without the ending. Remember, I will not put the ending. So I will show you a storyline of Cinderella, and we have to think which event is represents introduction, which events represent the build-up, which events represent the climax, which event represent resolution. So we're going to think of that. Okay, so I'll show you the storyline. Okay, let me just move this board a bit. Here. Okay, now focus on the board. Can you see it? Not as much. Okay. All right. So this is the storyline for Cinderella. So I think you can see it clearly. The first part, it says, the family is invited to the ball at the palace. The second part says, her stepmother found out that she went to the ball. The ball, it means the party. The third event is Cinderella lives with her awful stepmother and stepsisters, or two stepsisters. Number 4, Cinderella's stepmother locked her in her bedroom. Number 5, she goes to the ball and dances with the prince. She, it means Cinderella. It refers to Cinderella. The last one, it says Cinderella got out of her room and showed the prince the other pair of the glass shoes. Now I'll give you a few seconds to think about these events. Which one do you think belongs to or represents introduction? Yes. The event that represents introduction, you have to think it shows the characters and the settings of the event. In this case, it shows the characters, and that is this one. Cinderella lives with her awful stepmother and stepsisters. So you write in your notebook, introduction. Cinderella lives with her awful stepmother and stepsisters. So you write it there. Now, the next recipe or the next order of our story is the build-up. Now you have to think which of these events represents the build-up. You have time to check, and we have 2 build-up here. It's okay. You can have 2 or more build up, but make sure you understand the story, of course. The build up here is first here. So Cinderella lives with her awful stepmother. That's our introduction. And the build up will be this one. The family is invited to the ball at the palace. So you write it down on your notebook. Build up. The family is invited to the ball at the palace. And also this here, Anna. 5th, it's also part of the build-up. She goes to the ball and dances with the prince. So you also write it under build-up. She goes to the ball and dances with the prince. Now, the next recipe is our climax. Now, which of these events represent climax? Again, you can have 1 or 2 events as long as it shows in this story. So after Cinderella goes to the ball and dances with the prince, what do you think happened next? You can check now the storyline as you have introduction and build up. What happened next? Yes, what happened next is that her stepmother found out that she went to the ball. So this you can add to climax. So you write on your notebook, climax. Her stepmother found out she went to the ball. And also we can put this in climax. No, this one. Cinderella's stepmother locked her in her bedroom. So we have this and this. You write it down to your climax. Okay, first, this is just an example. You don't have to write it on your notebook. This is just an example of the activity. Alright. Okay, the next recipe is the resolution. So since we only have 1 left, of course, that's our resolution. So resolution, according to our recipe, it resolves the problem. So this is the only event that's left. It says Cinderella got out of her room and showed the prince the other pair of the glass shoes. So you write it down on your notebook and you write Cinderella got out of her room and showed the prince the other pair of the glass shoes. So it will look like this. It will look like this. Can you see? Let me try. Yeah, it will look like this. So on your notebook, your homework should look like this. This is just an example. Okay, this is just an example. So your homework will look like this. You should have you need to write your name, the date today, and then the title of the story, and then introduction, Cinderella lives with her awful stepmother and two stepsisters. Build up. You need to write, the family is invited to the ball at the palace. Cinderella goes to the ball and dances with the prince. Climax. Her stepmother found out she went to the ball. Cinderella's stepmother locked her in her bedroom. And resolution. Cinderella got out of her room and showed the prince the other pair of the glass shoes. So this is how your activity excuse me, will look like. As you can see, there's no ending. Same as your activity, there will be no ending. I will not include the ending. The ending will be for the next activity. So for your exercise today, you will only have to look for introduction, build up, climax, and resolution. All right, so only these 4. This is just an example. You can always check it and base the activity. Your activity, I already attached it in Google Classroom. You might have seen it already. For your activity, the story is still about, yes, you guessed it right, it's still about Harry's mad. And these are the events, of the story. Wait, let me just arrange the book. These are the events of the story. Here. And as the instruction, it says that the events in the Harry's mad plot got muddled. Use the story recipe on page 57, page here, this one. I also attached it in the material for your activity. You can always check that. Use that recipe to help you order the events in most likely in the most likely sequence. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We also have 6 events here. So you have to think now, which of these events represent the introduction? You have to read all of them first. I suggest you read all of them first, and you think, which of this event represents introduction? And then next recipe or next order is our build-up. Now you have to think, which of these events represents build-up. Again, you can have 1 or 2 events to put on your build-up or your climax. Okay, that's a clue already. And next is our climax or the problem. Which of these events represent climax or the problem in the story? And then lastly, resolution. Which of these events or event represents resolution? So you have to read all of them, and then you write it down on your notebook in order. All right, in order. Again, there's no ending. You don't have to write the ending part because the ending will be for the next activity. You understand it? So again, on your notebook, you should have your name, the date, and then the title, Harry's Mad. Introduction, you have to select on these events. Build up, find the events here that represent build up. The next one until resolution. All right, do you understand that? If you have any question, you can always message in the group. I've sent that instruction in the message earlier today. And let me see what else. I will also what do you call this, include the blurb, this blurb. I've also included that in your material in case you want to check again the blurb. But what can help you is this part. You have to understand introduction, the characters. It shows the characters in the settings, and then the plot. You have to understand what builds the story going to the problem, and then complication or the climax or the problem. What's the problem in the story? And then resolution, how it's solved. The ending, we'll discuss it next activity. All right. So here I am. So good luck to your activity. What else? Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me a message. You can always send me a message. And please check the deadline. I will, together with your homework, I will post the time until what time you can pass your activity, all of them. For English, Math, and Turkish, you will see it there. You have the day, of course. It will be later this afternoon, I guess, the deadline. But you will just check the time. Always check the time. It might change or not, but just check it. And as you've read in the message, you need to submit your homework or worksheet on time, because that's where I'm going to base your attendance. If you're late on your homework or activity, I will mark you late and you will not get 100% of your score, to be fair for those who are submitting on time. And if you're not going to submit your homework or activity, I will mark you absent. Simple as that. If there's something, again, I'm saying it again, if there's something that you need or question that you want to ask, just ask me. I've set the time as well until when you can ask questions, but you can still ask me. Anyway, so the activity, write it down, and good luck, guys. See you next lesson.